Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sandwich Generation Pod. I'm Robin.
And I'm Elisa, and this is our
Season
finale! Woohoo!
Okay, we know caregiving can be heartbreaking and exhausting, but today's episode is about joy, about presence, about delighting in the now, even when things are heavy, maybe especially when things are heavy.
And today we have a very special guest, our friend Stephanie March, who many of you know as a food writer, and is now the writer of a popular substack called Pickle, where she writes about creativity, love, fear, parenting, loss, grief, joy, basically all of the most important things in life. And she is also one of my dearest friends who has lived out the idea so beautifully of saying goodbye and celebrating the time that we have. This episode is going to stick with you, and we are so excited to have Stephanie here.
Let's get into it.
So today we are here to talk about this idea of celebrating the time we have. I think this is a great season finale topic, but also like why we wanted to have you is because Robin and I can speak to having our parents still here. You are a person who... I know. Yeah, you're an orphan.
Yeah.
I'm an orphan. That's it.
You're
I'm an orphan.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was thinking about this episode, I thought of you for many reasons, but because, I mean, we're like family level friends, right? But when I saw you walk alongside Oma and this thing you called the long goodbye, which we'll have you explain, I was very inspired because you didn't seemingly approach that time with total heaviness. I mean, of course it was, right? Like, of course it was hard. But you approached it with a lot of light and a lot of love and a lot of positivity going forward with a terminal diagnosis that, by the way, seemed to come out of nowhere for her. So when we talk about celebrating the time we have, Robin and I could sit here all day and talk about like, oh, here are things that we can do like with our parents that are still here. But I think for a lot of listeners, it's also important to talk about if there is a terminal diagnosis or if you do have a really short amount of time left with your loved one, how can you celebrate the time you have still? So that's kind of a way that I hope to end this season. But why don't you start?
Yeah, can you, because I really don't know
a lot about the story.
Can you just
The story,
back
right?
up and tell us, from the beginning about Oma?
About Oma. And her name was Brigitte von Haken, my mother, a very resolute German who also had a
Wait, can you say her name one more time?
Yeah, Brigitte von Haken. But she was known as Oma to everybody, which is grandmother. And we always referred to her to my friends and everything else. It was just Oma. But so my mom was, like I said, a German who was just an intellect, like a crazy smart human. She had both math and English. You know, she was like a CPA and a CFO of a company when she was, in her working days. And she was also like a voracious reader and consumer of all things, thoughts and intellectual. And she sang in church choirs, and she was a very high soprano and sang in cathedrals all across Europe. And so she was art and science. She was kind of the perfect woman. Obviously, I put her a little bit on a pedestal.
As she should be.
We do that.
Right.
We do that.
She was my best friend, and she was the person who I spoke to about everything, but also not in a very, she was very much about go live your life. She was very much about go live your life, go be a human in the world, and then just come back whenever you need it, kind of a thing. So it was the winter of 2022 and into 2023, and she was just feeling run down, and we were all kind of like, oh, you just can't beat this cold. And, Christmas, she was like, I'm going to go home early because I'm just kind of tired. And it was just, that was the vibe. That was also the year that we got so much snow. So we go into 2023, January, and things are feeling, kind of heavy, or there's a lot of snow on the ground. She just kind of can't kick this thing. She's like, I'm going to go in. I'm going to just get another blood test and see how it goes. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And just chatting on the phone. And then one morning I woke up to a whole bunch of texts, and phone calls from what turned out to be her doctor, and who I didn't have any attachment to, so I had no idea. And I called this number back, and I was like, I'm getting a lot of messages to call into this doctor. And they're like, we can't get a hold of your mom. And she has you listed as her, emergency contact. And I was. And she had some kind of alarming results from a blood test yesterday. And now we can't get a hold of her. She needs to get into the hospital right now. And I'm like,
Whoa.
What?
Whoa.
What? For like a cold?
Yeah.
I'm like, what is this? And they're like,
Right.
We really just need you to get her to this hospital. I was like, okay. So I raced out to her house and had to like pound on the door to wake her up, because it was mid-morning. And I was like, am I going to find my mom dead in her house?
Right. Right.
And I couldn't even get in because she had one of those whammy bars up against the door. And so like, I was like, even though I had all the keys, I was like not getting in. And so I finally got her like pounding. I literally texted my son, Matt, and was like, you may need to come out here and break into my mom's house. She's like, okay, I'm ready. She woke up and she's like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? And her hair's all like, this. And
she's like, I was having the sleep of my life.
To the hospital, girl. And she's like, why? I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, I've been sleeping so hard. And I'm like, yeah, I don't get it. Okay, so we package her up. We, get her all dressed. Of course, she has to put on her earrings and a full face of makeup. And then we go into the hospital. She does her hair. About, 6 hours later, they tell her she has leukemia. And she said, no, not cancer. I'm not doing that. I've already done that. I'm not going to do that again. And, of course, you don't get to choose.
Yeah.
And she literally had been roof raking the day before. She had a hemoglobin of 4. And for those of us in the blood space, we all know that the normal hemoglobin for a human is 15. So my mother had a hemoglobin of 4, which is basically nearly done. Wow. And so the bigger piece of this is like the lead up to that is that she had cancer before. She was turning 83 a month from that point. And she had kind of said, well, let's kind of see how this goes. And with leukemia, you go through some stages. There's different kinds of leukemia. There's stuff you can live for, 5 years with it. And then there's things that are more, acute. And on her birthday, which was February 18th, she came over to the house with the kids, and we all kind of had been dealing with the fact of, let's figure out how this goes. How do we do this? There's treatments that can be had. There's, lots of blood transfusions, which she'd already gotten a few of at that point. Mm-hmm. And on her birthday, we were all hanging out outside, which was nice because we didn't want to get her sick. And then she was leaving. And the next day we had an appointment to talk to her doctor about potential, treatments. And I walked her out to her car after hanging out with all the kids. And she said, I just don't want you to be disappointed. And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, I just don't want you to be disappointed tomorrow because it may not matter what they say. I just need you to understand that I have no desire to be in treatment just to extend the life in pain or in a horrible sense in for like 6 months. She's like, it's not worth it. And she said a thing that has always been, I'm gonna get like this a couple times.
We cry on this podcast, March.
I know you do.
Can we offer you a Kleenex from afar?
Do you have some
yes,
Kleenex
I would
nearby?
take a Kleenex, and I don't know why I didn't prepare myself. But she said we believe in quality, not quantity. And that's the thing my entire life has been about with that, is it doesn't matter how much you have. It's the vibration or the tenor of what you have when you have it. So the next day we went and talked to her oncologist, and he said, yeah, we can definitely start treatment, and you will be in the hospital for 3 months minimum. And, the treatment itself might kill you. And so just, and she's like, well, how much does that like actually add on? He's like, you could get like a year and a half out of this more. And she was like, yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. No. So in that way, she said, dying is a part of life. And in fact, it is the only real thing that we know about life is that it ends. Mm-hmm. And that we all do alone, but we all do it together. And so she said, we're facing this death as a part of life. And she's like, I'm 83. What am I going to do? Poison myself and be miserable for 6 months so that I have another 6 months of,
6 months. Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, it's not worth it to me. And she's like, and it's harder for you, she said, and it'll be harder for you, but it's harder for me to see that how sad you're going to be. She's like, but this is the way we do this, and this is how we teach people not to be afraid of death. We teach them to be a part of it, be a part of the process, because it is nothing to be afraid of. It is the most natural thing, and in the end, it actually defines life, because you cannot have life without the understanding that it does end. And so that's how we stepped into the long goodbye. And they said we had 6 months, and that's what we got.
Wow, that's incredible. Like, even knowing this, to hear that again and to hear her words again, it is very touching and like very inspiring, because I think how I was exposed to death, there was never a talk about it being part of the natural process, really. That's something that like I have just come to believe as an adult, right? That like, that's actually what I align with. But I think that's amazing that that's how she guided you to as her daughter. In this is okay, and we're going to live in the dying.
Yeah.
And we're going to live.
We're going to live through it. Like through it, you know? And the worst part is you can't learn it without going through it. But that was her final gift in her mind to me. And she knew that as a writer and as someone who observes the world and then tries to translate it for other people, she knew that I would be able to give it to other people in a certain way. And that maybe would help them, and maybe would help them understand. And maybe be less afraid, because that's literally her thing, was like, and she's, again, German enough to say, you Americans, to me all the time. Like, I'm a foreign entity to her often. She's like, you Americans. I'm like, how do I, your own daughter, represent this entire milieu? But she would say, you Americans tend to run from this stuff. And she was like,
you're soft.
You know, she's like, you can't run from it. There is no running for it. So why not face it? Why not experience it? So that's kind of what we did.
She sounds like she was like a poet in her own right, you know? I mean,
really
I know
was.
You're a writer, but like when you hear things put so plainly, it is not complicated.
I have to tell you the Home Depot story, which Elisa knows. So this is a woman, also, let's be clear, a CFO. So a poet and a CFO. So everything had to be like set and ready. So she was already getting all of her accounts set up, and all the money goes into the right places, and we had all the things. And then she was like, all right, well, my dryer is broken, and there's a chance that I might have like somebody come over to the house. You know, like if I have a nurse situation, she wasn't sure, and we weren't sure. She's like, I'm just going to get a new dryer. And I'm like, really? Because why? And she's like, well, what if someone has to be here to care, and then they will have to dry things and do laundry? And in the same way where she was like getting the front bulb fixed on the door, so that in case somebody had to show up that she didn't know. Anyway, she was kind of death nesting a little bit. And she sort of did this thing where she fixed, so that we're at Home Depot and we're buying a dryer, and this guy was helping us, and she was asking questions about like, well, when is delivery and all this stuff, and he was like, well, I don't know, we're gonna have to check and see, you know, it might be a couple weeks. And she's like, you got to snap to it, I have cancer, so let's hop to it. And he was like sitting there, and she goes, I mean, I have cancer, so we don't know how long this is gonna last. And he just like sat there. And he looked at her, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. And like, she's a little bit more blunt about it than a lot of people. I'm like, you don't know. Like, he could have had somebody die of cancer. And then that's like this whole thing. She's like, I don't care. We got to get moving. Like, I got cancer. Let's go. So
we're not waiting for any delivery delays. This dryer must come.
Sometimes you got to drop the C word when you want things done, you know?
I was like, this is a new card for you. This is amazing, you know? I know. I know. And in fact, I have to show you, I don't know, Lisa, if you ever saw this. I had DNR cards made up for her. Like, you know, do not resuscitate. It's like a business card, and it has her name on the front and all of her information, her birth date, her address, her phone, her email. And on the back, it says, DNR, I have a copy of my health directive in my purse in accordance with Minnesota law. My health agent is Stephanie March, and it has then all my information. And so she had a bunch of them on her. I had a bunch of them on me at all times. And then when we'd go to doctor's appointments, we would just put the card down. And then they had all of her information, because you guys know when you go to health appointments, you have to repeat the same information over and over again.
1,000 times. Yeah.
And she was like, I am so tired of this. I'm like, let me make you a card.
And it looks beautiful. Like, it's very cool.
It's like death
very
merch.
Yeah.
Death merch. It's like, yeah.
I know, right?
Okay. If we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's make it easy. Let's make you a card, a little business card for dying. That's amazing.
Yeah. I did not know that, and I absolutely love that. That is, like, I would like to make some death cards now, just in case for people, right? Like,
you should.
That's kind of a great business.
Yeah.
Seriously.
DNR business.
Everyone has their wishes, and as you know, we're going about life with our aging parents. Things can feel very fragile sometimes. In my scenario, sometimes my parents' wishes, should a certain moment happen, are not my wishes.
Right.
But it is my job to carry out what they want, and a DNR is one of those. And I have never thought about having something on hand to communicate that to other people should and when something happen. And I kind of love that idea. That is a great tip for listeners.
Well, and because she lived on her own, right? She wasn't in a care facility. And I drove her to, things, but she was also out driving herself. She would go to Lund's and she'd go, and I was like, you need to have this in case something happens and you drop. And you got to make sure that they, A, know who to call, but B, that nobody does any heroic measures that you don't want,
Yes. That's really great.
I'm so taken aback by the simplicity of the fact that you approach this with so much levity and humor.
Yeah.
And I think there are so many people out there that when they get a death sentence or they get a finite time that they have with their loved ones, there's just so much gravity to that. And it's sad and it's heavy, which it is. We can't take that away. But I'm wondering, were you on board right away with that approach? Was it when she said it, were you just like, okay, that's how we're going to do this? Or did that take time for you to adjust to?
No, I was on board. So I'm going to tell you honestly, and this is going to be a hard thing for some people, so I kind of want to give a little bit of a trigger warning maybe. I've had a pact with my mom since I was a young woman. And her father, my Opa, who I had Oma and Opa, and so her father, my Opa, he passed. He got to be about 90 years old. And my Oma had passed when I was in college, 20 years before that. He'd been living on his own. He got tired of living. He was done with it. And he was old and he kept having dizzy spells and falling. And he was just sick of being weak. And he decided to end his own life. And he did so while my mom was at his house, which is not ideal. And she wasn't in on it. Yep. She didn't know what was happening. The way he did it, I won't describe. And but after that, we had a large discussion because she was not mad at him. And she's like, I'm more pissed that he didn't talk to me about it. I'm more pissed that he didn't let me in on it. And so we had a pact that if she was ever immobilized and could not speak, and if she'd had some sort of an event, we had a pact that I was supposed to help her get to the right place. So knowing that for as long as I had, I knew how she felt about those things, and I knew how much I would miss her, and I knew how much my life would be empty, but I also knew that the life that she led, and it was she survived so many things. This is a woman who survived the war. At 3 years old, she was in Germany standing in bread lines for her sisters, at 3 years old, for her whole family. She was a kid who was moved through war-torn landscapes and lived in a refugee camp for a while and then moved to Canada and had to become an American, and all of these, divorce and financial hardship and all the things that my mom had suffered and lived through with wit and intelligence and a verve for life I was never going to let her down. And I was never going to assume that my feelings were more important than hers. And so I had to honor her, and as much as I knew I would miss her, it was never a thought to me that I wasn't going to carry out how she wanted to. She lived her life how she wanted to. No way was I going to take over and not let her live how she wanted to live.
I love that. Okay, so once it was on, and you were like, okay, the party's on. We're going to live out these days we have.
We have 6 months.
Yeah. She was diagnosed early January, and she left us in mid June. And I will say this, she wore down, obviously, because that's leukemia sort of just makes you tired and it just takes away all the good energy. And you can get transfusions. And she'd had an infection in April that we put her in the hospital because she was like, what is this? I have a fever. And we were like, we don't know, so she went into the hospital, got some antibiotics, which is not a DNR, right? She was in palliative care. And so that just meant that they're going to fix symptoms and they're going to fix things. They're not going to save her life, but they're going to, kind of fix what they can fix. You're not trying to battle the disease. You're just fixing symptoms. Yep. So she had a little infection. They fixed the infection. But in that hospital overnight, they were like, so this is what this is like. You could do this for a year. You could continue to stay on palliative care, and you could then keep fighting infections, and getting transfusions, or you can go into hospice, which would mean you are just sort of taking, you're not really getting
essentially.
Yeah.
You're
just basically, And so she decided that. And so we the way that we really did this was we made sure that she had the visitors that she could have. I would pick her up and drive her to go places just because she was, getting more tired. And that was it. And because you don't want an infection, her patio was great. And we always had people over on her patio and she would be outside so that there was, no chance of COVID or anything kind of coming at her. And we just did a lot of hanging out. She was just happy to have visitors and happy to have people in a very limited way. But the main thing for me was I would sit with her and just visit, and I would record her telling stories. And I specifically asked her stories about when she was a teenager and about when she was younger, like the refugee camp days and when she moved to Canada and what that was like. Because those were stories that I remembered, but I wasn't quite clear on. And so I got all that, things that I may have had holes in understanding her timeline. And then I just recorded those. And that was just I put my phone on record and I sat on the couch and we just chatted.
This is an idea that is a reoccurring theme. I think that's been coming up in the last few episodes, is this idea of recording stories from your loved ones. And it's so easy. And do you feel like having those recordings is, do you ever
listen to them,
hang out and just want some time with her and listen? Or is it something that you just are happy you have and maybe it's hard to listen to?
Yeah, it's weird because it's been 2 years, right? And I still haven't really listened to them. And it's her voice. Every once in a while, I go through my photo albums and stuff on my phone or whatever, and I have a thing of her cheersing or doing all that kind of stuff, and so I hear her voice every once in a while, but I haven't been able to sort of sit through and listen to those yet, and I still have a lot of her stuff hanging around me too, so I'm working through.
Well, and grief does not have a timeline, right?
No, it does not.
Nor do we have to be in a rush.
No, and that's I would say that even the 6 months, it was at sometimes it felt too long, and I hate to say it like that, but you don't understand it unless you're in it. And I know that she was like, I'm a little bit sick of being the dying person.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm a little tired of being a lady who's dying. She's like, that milieu is a little bit cliche and played out,
So what did you do to celebrate? What did you do to actually, be uplifting and just savor the moments? And what were the things that you decided you were going to do?
Well, I'm going to tell you that there's something important to understand that we said to her, where do you want to go? And how do you want to do this? And what do you want to eat? And I just want to be clear that, as a person who's dying, I thought it was going to be about, events and go places and eat things. And can I cook you all these meals? And let's have, one last thing. She kept saying, I've traveled everywhere I've wanted to travel. She took trips around the globe. And so she's like, I'm good. Unfortunately for me as a food person, my love language is food. She kind of wasn't that hungry because her body was shutting down. And so it wasn't big things. And I want to be clear about that, is that celebration at the end, for us at least, wasn't really about big things. It's the small things. And that is sitting on her porch and telling stories and having some of her cousins come over, who she hadn't seen in a couple years. And they went into this revelry about the old days, and I got to record that. But things that I couldn't have asked because I didn't even know to ask. And then she spent time in that space. And that was for her really important to have the memories be the part of it. And so for us, it wasn't a celebration in terms of partying. It was a celebration in terms of, and this kind of kicks you in the butt, right? But it's those small things that we all take for granted anyway.
Yeah.
That's the celebration. Like that's the celebration. That's the real meaning. That's, as you're leaving, that's what you want. You don't want a party and a trip and everything else. You want small times on your couch with your kid.
Yeah.
And you want to
and
just
that's
like,
life, right?
That's it. And that's like,
we're all crying now.
No,
it's so true though, because it hits.
It is.
I mean, that's it.
You guys, so here's the thing. Like I said, the hardest part for me again was I'm a feeder. Like I feed people and I feed my family, and to have her not be able to eat the things. My friends are also feeders, and so they would send over so much food. So we had like so much soup from Meyer and so much like, high protein, low like sodium things from like from Molly and everybody else.
Everyone's trying to heal too,
yeah,
right?
That's how we know how to do it. Yeah, food is always the answer,
we
think.
For her, and we're all, and the poor woman is like, yeah, I just want coconut shrimp from Lund's. Like, that's all she wanted. Was at the end was like this weird coconut shrimp from Lund's. The week before she died, and of course we couldn't have known. She said, "Let's have the ladies over, and so I can properly thank them." And someone made a cake, and all the things. And she's like, "I can't do more than 4." And so I had some of the ladies come over and sit in the living room, and we had tea, and she told a couple stories. And then when I went in to cut the cake, Almost Famous pound cake, I didn't know this until much later, but she cornered them, or she stopped when she knew I couldn't hear. Mm-hmm. She gave them the message of what they needed to do for me, for her. And a lot of that was like, make her quit her job. She's not, I know. She's like, don't let her be a slave to this. Do not let her, help her figure out her freaking money. Do all this stuff. Like, don't let her do this. And it was like, I didn't know any of this message until after she passed. And so that was also a very meaningful thing for her too, to be able to take something for later and to be there, for later for me. So that was a gift. That was a huge gift. And then of course that was like days before she passed, and we didn't know that was going to happen. So that was kind of beautiful.
This is why I felt so strongly about you coming on for this episode, because I knew it was the little things. And that's what inspired me so much in just watching you too. And it's not like I was like physically around hanging out with you and Oma, but like from afar. I mean, listen, in our friends group, during that time that Oma got diagnosed, I would have absolutely in that time thought that I was going to lose a parent before you, because my dad was in the ICU. It was like very touch and go. And it also made me realize, like, holy shit. I mean, we don't know how much time we have, right? But at certain moments along my own journey, you guys were all surrounding me and like preparing me for something. And then we would shift and like surround you. Your parents' health journeys took a very different, like a hard left turn, right? Yeah. And like suddenly you were faced with the reality that there was a limited amount of time. But seeing how, like, I know it was a mess. I know it wasn't easy. Probably still feels like a mess. But how you respected and carried out Oma's wishes was just a beautiful way to approach death. And seeing you go through that, and then actually Chef Jack, when he was dying, I went and I took photos of him and his lovely wife Kat, and they were the first people that told me about a death doula and how they had hired a death doula to walk them through the dying process, because he also had a limited time. And like these two scenarios are ones that, from me watching from the outside, really made me think about how we approach death. And exactly what Oma was saying, is that oftentimes it's riddled with like fear and loss, and like, of course, right? Like, of course, everyone's going to be sad, but it also can be approached in a way that it's okay. I don't know. I think about Oma often. I mean, I am lucky enough to like have her earrings. I could
bring the power.
Man, it is hard to do this interview. I'm not going to lie, because I've spent most of it crying.
I know. Sorry, guys.
I'm like, dude, how does Hoda keep it together, man?
But here's the thing, like having those earrings, they hold so much power, and they hold such an energy. And I talked about that in a previous episode about friendship and how you and Oma went through some of her belongings and this earring collection, and then you gifted them to friends. And I don't have many valuable things, especially along the lines of jewelry, but those earrings are like it's like my journals, and those earrings are like the top of my list, because because they just hold such good energy, and they remind me how to live. Like, they really do. I wear them on days I need them, and it changes my day. And
changes your day.
It does. And they're also grounding. Like, when I wear them or look at them, like, it reminds me that we don't know how much time we have left. It reminds me that we have to live life to the fullest. I have this little saying that I use in our family, and I have a poster of it at our wall that, like, these are the days, right? Mm-hmm. It's very simple, but like, even in the tiniest little moments, those are the magic, I think.
That's it.
These are the days. Natalie Burgess.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Natalie Burgess, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to the 90s.
It was in The Office. Remember when they were like,
yes,
I wish there was a way to know that you were in the good old days.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, while you're in them. And that's the truth. There is a way. You have to choose it.
You have to choose it, which I love how resolute Oma was in her choice. And she died the way she lived, which is such a how-to playbook on life. You know, listening to all this, I think about, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, and my mom has Alzheimer's. So I've sort of danced around that or mentioned that on this podcast, but I feel like it's okay to say today. But what it means is we have a finite time with her. And, you know, it's so hard, the long goodbye, but it's a gift. Time is a gift. And I think about my kids being exposed to what's happening with my parents, because both of them are declining and they're in assisted living. And, you know, my kids have been exposed to a lot of sort of like the end of life stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. And also in Disney, the parents always die. So Thank you, Disney. I've mentioned that before. So they want to talk about death a lot, and they're 3 and 5. And I really try to not shy away from it, because I feel the same thing. I say, yes, everybody dies. And I know that's a lot to say to a 3-year-old. And by the way, she was talking to her relatives the other day, and my husband was like getting something in the car, and my uncle was like, where's your dad? And she's like, he died in jail. So sometimes it comes out sideways, you know. But they are getting an education very early about the fact that everybody lives and everybody dies. We all do. Yeah. And you know, I thought to myself, like, that's so profound to say to a child, because we spend our whole lives trying to wrap our heads around the fact that it happens, you know, and how we're going to do it and how are we going to deal with it. But I just think, like, being in the sandwiched moment, you know, we don't really have a choice, you know, like I'm dealing with it every day. And so they're in the back seat and they're hearing it. And I do think that there is a way to embrace it. And like you said in the poetry in the beginning of, like, there's nothing that makes you live life and light a fire under you more than the fact that you die. And I always say, like, you live, you die, and the only thing in between are the people that you're with. You know, that's it. It's that simple. So whenever you get your panties in a bunch about everything else, like, all you have in the end are the people around you. So I don't know. I think we all need to learn from Oma. Like,
there's a thing that we talk about, or that I read it somewhere, so I didn't create this saying, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. But that, you know, sorrow is just the beginning of gratitude. And so you get the death part, you know, the finality of it, and the sorrow that you miss them. And that's the sadness. The sadness is that I don't have Oma to talk to anymore. That I can't go sit in her kitchen and, like, sit around her round table and find out who I was. I'm so sad about that, but I'm also so grateful that I did have it. And like, that's the value. I'll be completely honest and just tell you that my father, who died a couple years ago, I don't have the same feelings for, and he was absent in my life a lot. So that's not surprising. I didn't have the same relationship for him, but this woman, was like my everything. And I realized that the sadness that I have for her is really just the gratitude that I have, that is what formed me,
Absolutely.
Well, and I love the idea of legacy. I really think like that's one of the most powerful things we have. People can't live forever, but their stories can. And I talk a lot to my kids about my Grandma Jean and my Grandpa Cookie, who died many years ago, but they're very much alive in my mind. And her story feels like it's my story. It's like the fabric of who I am. And I love the idea of like how Oma lives on and focusing on that. It's like the little things, sitting with this person, holding their hand, talking about stories, laughing about the little things, but also how do I make this person continue to live on in our memories? In Judaism, they say, may her memory be a blessing. And it is really important to talk about the people that died. It's really important to carry on who they were, because that forms your identity and how you move through the world. Carrying the stories of the people that came before you is such an important part of who you are. And I love like how even giving out her earrings was a way of saying, this is a way for me to live on. And her messages to your friends, this is how Oma lives on and like keeps nurturing you even after she's gone.
I saw her get up again 100 times, and I saw her figure it out. And that's what I modeled. That's what I do for my kids. And also giving them that space to be their own people. Like, that was her gift to me. I got to be who I was. She didn't muck around too hard with it. And I let my kids be who they are going to be. I'm not in control of them. They're in control of themselves. So
let's talk about this. You're an amazing parent to all of your children. They're all remarkable humans. So we're talking about the sandwich generation, right?
Yeah.
And Lab and I are sitting here with our parents still alive and with young children. Yes. But in your reality, when you learned that Oma had 6 months to live, how in that moment did you guide your children while you're also carrying out Oma's wishes? How did you help them?
Well, and I would say that
goodbye.
Yeah, the good news is that they all knew Oma. They were tracking. Like, she was she was a weekly part of our lives. She was at every holiday. We were her people and she was our people. So they knew exactly what this meant. And that day that she told me not to be disappointed, and then before she actually made the decision, I came back in the house and all my kids were here, and I told them, I was like, you guys need to be ready. You need to be ready that she's not going to fight. We have to be ready to say goodbye sooner than later. And everyone gets sad, and it feels like, how can we be here without her? How does that even work? How is Christmas going to work? These moments that are crystallized as memories and as traditions. And yet that's kind of the space of then getting them ready and also teaching them to sort of like, okay, we're going to have to deal with this together. And I will tell you that one of the things I did for Jake did go back to college. He was in college and we had to call him and tell him all this stuff. And then he talked to her on the phone quite a bit. He specifically came home for spring break to sort of spend the time with her. And, they had a very, very special relationship because she saw him like every Thursday since he was a baby. I handed him off to her the very first Thursday he was home. And they had that for his life. And so he and she walked around the house when he was home, and they got to have like, oh, remember when we played pirates over here? And remember when this, we did at this tree? Remember this game? He got to have those memories with her, and he just spent a couple days with her, and then he was fine. And he said, I don't need to be here like when she goes, because I just need to be here. Like, she's here for me. She's here for me. He didn't need to be physically present with her to be connected to her. And so he went back off to college, and he was okay because of the way she raised him. You know what I mean? And so I have to tell you that my kids, the thing that I loved the most is that they have their own lives. The other kids are all grown, and my daughter has her own children. And so we have these layers of humanity here. But when I called them to tell them, I was at her house, and it happened from a morning. It happened over 24 hours that I was there with her. They came over. I said, I'm going to have to be here all night and, potentially even this week because I didn't understand what was really happening. I ordered pants from Amazon to be delivered the next day because I was wearing a skirt when I went there. And so my kids brought over like my toothbrush and all this stuff. And I think that is hilarious now, Like,
it is in those moments that you're like,
yeah. Like even in the
you kind of panic by.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And so, but they showed up and they sat with me and we all sat around each other. And then they went home that night. And then in the morning, she passed around 6 a.m. I called them and they all came over. Everybody except for the one at college, but they all came over and they all came home. We just sat in her house and we all just sat and talked and had memories. And it was the idea that I let them do what they needed to do, which was then take care of me. And that's also hard because here I am taking care of my mom. And so then my kids wonderfully stepped up and took care of me. And that was like, that made them feel good. And I had to let them because I also have control and power issues.
Well, you were raised by a strong German woman, and that is also who you are. Yes.
Yeah. So, but to allow them to do that was to then recognize their needs and recognize their humanity and also the hospitality that I have instilled in all of them, which is to care for other people first, and that to me was like also an understanding of it's a very hard thing for people who are grieving and people who have been caretakers. And this is the thing for you too. I know of both of you is it's hard to let people care for you. And it's hard to allow it because you feel like you're going to let go of your grip. If you at all let go, it's a house of cards and it's all going to come down.
That's exactly how it feels.
I know.
Well, I'm a mess over here. Jeez. You're dropping some bombs, girl. God.
That's exactly how it feels. It does feel like a house of cards.
I've melted into a listener. I am no longer a host. I am so sorry, but I'm in therapy. I've got a box of tissues.
I know. It is hard to accept. It is hard to accept sometimes.
And it's so hard to let people care for you. I love that in that moment you knew that was what you needed to do. Like that is one of the most beautiful things. Yeah. That I've ever heard. Like you do need to let other people take care of you because that is what they need. That is such I've never really heard that put into words. Damn, that was good. And that's something we all need to hear.
It's a part of that same process. It's all a part of it. And letting go, which is like the actual act you're doing. And so you have to just let it all go at the same time.
Is there, I know that I'm just trying to get my shit together right now. Okay.
I have a good story if you want one of that.
I was going to ask you a question. I'd love a story.
Yeah. So here's the story of Oma's last words, which is so great because it's also very hilarious in a way. So the problem was that because leukemia takes the blood, it eventually just sort of, it robs oxygen from your blood. So your blood isn't really doing what it's supposed to do. So what happened is that she had a stroke because her brain wasn't being fed the right oxygen anymore. So when I showed up on the morning, she was sort of asleep, and then she was sort of like, oh, I've had this headache, and I've had, a fever since yesterday, and I'm a little worried it's an infection. She was kind of like talking, but she was also just like really groggy. And I was kind of like, oh, well, we have the hospice nurse coming tomorrow. Let me go see what kind of, drugs I should be putting you on. And she'd been on like Dilaudid, and that was for her headaches. And so I was like, maybe that was a reaction to the Dilaudid. And then she kind of said, well, I think it's the Slurgen-Flurgen-Lala. And I was like, the what? And she's like, the Slurgen-Flurgen-Lala. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but let me look it up, And I'm like trying to And then she just kind of went to sleep again. And I was like, oh, okay, well, all right, you're tired, you know? And I called the hospice nurse, and our regular woman couldn't get there. She was across like the state almost. And she's like, but I have a woman in the area who's on the team. And so they sent her over, and my mom had started to like sat up again. And I'm like, do you need to go to the bathroom? Can I help you or whatever? And she would look at, and she would just say, and I was like, okay. And I don't know what you're saying, Mom, but I'm like, and then she was sitting there and she was just like, oh, and that's when I started to panic, actually, because I was like, she's not saying actual words. And it's the worst thing in the world for this woman to not be able to communicate. And like, again, our pact was if she can't communicate, that was not okay. Yep. And so I was like, oh my God. And so then this hospice nurse came over, she saw her, she figured it out, and she was like, well, she's had a stroke. And it's just part of the process. And I was like, so what's going to happen? Because she's like, well, I'm going to have you talk to your hospice nurse. So I was like, okay. And so I was waiting for my nurse to call back, and I would get my mother up from, had been sleeping in this day bed that we had. And I was like, can we get you into your bed and get her up to go to the bathroom? And she actually wasn't, she would say she was like bathroom. And I was like, okay, I got that. Let's get you to the bathroom. And then she would say some stuff. And I was like, I'm not getting you. And I'm like, Mom, I can't understand you. And I'm so sorry. And she was frustrated by it. And as I was getting her, but let's get you into your bed. Like, let's get you comfortable. And she was kind of like, you could tell she was sort of frustrated. And as we're walking her back to her room, she's like, I had my arm kind of hooked in, and she kind of leans me into the office as we're passing by the office, which is right before her bedroom. And she's kind of leaning me in. And I'm like, no, Mom, we're going to your bedroom. And she's like, she's kind of pushing and pulling me at the same time. And I'm like, we don't need to be in here. And then she looks down and she points at the ground. And there are like 4 giant garbage bags full of crap, you know, like that she's been death cleaning herself. And she looks at me clear as day and goes, these need to go out. And I'm like, okay. And she goes, these need to go out. And I was like, yeah, I get it. Knowing my procrastination issues, this woman had basically scheduled a pickup from like the Leukemia Society, or like, you know, from one of the societies to come get these bags of garbage. And then she's like, okay. And I said, okay. And then I got her into her bedroom and I tucked her into her bed. And those were the last words my mother said to me. was these
Take out the trash.
Take out the trash.
Baby.
Do you think that was like the Glachschulen that she was trying to, in German, she was trying to say, take out the trash?
Yeah, no, she just, regular take out the trash, man. Just get it out. These need to go out. I've already called a truck, and they're coming tomorrow, and these need to go out. And I'm like,
because
right.
we all have things that need to get done. And
yeah.
I love that.
And,
I love that.
And I would tell you that even though she knew she couldn't communicate, she knew I wasn't understanding. And one of the things that my mom had said was that she was not up for a very Victorian death. She was like, she's like, no one shall be perched over me, watching me die. She's like, we will not be doing this Victorian thing. And so her big thing was like, she didn't really want me in the room or anybody in the room because she thought that was too much, you know. Dignity was very important to her. And so that was a thing too. I think she just didn't want to have that process that was undignified in the way, the actual physical process. But unfortunately, that was not what we got. You know, it's also important to know that sometimes, like, we didn't plan for a stroke. We didn't plan for her not being able to communicate. So I got her into the bed that day, and then I sat down on the corner of the bed because I was just kind of like, okay, tucked in, and I just kind of sat there, and she realized that I was sitting there, and that's when she realized what was going on. And she took my hand and she held it and she put it on her heart like this. Oh. And then she looks at me like this. And then she just goes like this. And she like threw my hand off, like, get out.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, loud and clear. I'm like, have a nap and I'll be back when I need to give you the morphine, you know? And so that was it. I mean, that was her saying goodbye as best as she could. And I said, I love you. And then that was it. And then she didn't really wake up again. So I basically had to feed her, you know, like morphine every hour because her body was, in fact, dying. Yeah. And I shepherded that process, which was the hardest end of my life. And I've considered myself extremely privileged to have been there. And I questioned everything and all the times, and I went through all the things, and I made phone calls to nurse lines at 2 a.m. and I screamed, and then I calmed, and then she left. So
tell me about the calm.
You
said you calmed. Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, it was. Well, I was giving her morphine every hour on the hour, and as per the hospice nurse's instructions. And there was a point though that it was stressing me out that I was hurting her more, that I was doing this wrong. And I called the nurse line, panicked that what was I doing wrong? Because she wasn't peacefully going into that good night. And she was not quietly going off into the sunset. And so I was panicked, and I called, and I was like, you're not telling me that. I literally yelled at this poor woman at like 4 a.m. on the phone. And I was like,
as we do.
This poor hospice nurse who mans a 24-hour hospice line, right?
As we all
like,
have.
The angel of mercy is like, you're doing great, girl. She's like, you're doing great. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Everything is happening the way it's supposed to happen. She's like, you're not hurting her. And at that point, I was like, it just hit me, and I was like, what am I doing? I know she's dying. Like, that was the moment that I was like, I literally, it's like the Amazon pants I was still in that space. It wasn't until probably about 5 a.m. that I really faced that fact, even though I'd been facing it for 6 months. I'd been facing it for a week. I'd been facing it for like those hours, those last 12 hours. It wasn't until that moment that I faced it that she was actually leaving. And then when I did, I was like, okay. And so I actually walked out into her garden, and there was one last peony in bloom, and I snipped it, and I brought it back to her room and stuck it in water so she could have some peony smell. And I put a cold compress on her head and tucked her in, and she was calm and she was quiet. And I said, I love you. And I kind of just left it at that. I walked back down the hallway, and I got maybe 15 steps, and I just stopped, and I turned back, and I went back in, and she was gone. So that's the gift, though.
Yeah, but it is. And that's like, I mean, even up until her last moments, you were with her. Yeah. And that is a gift. That is a celebration of all the time that you had. I cannot imagine how brutal that felt in the moment. Also, the idea of like you have 24/7 hospice care, but like I think people don't always understand that doesn't mean that they're physically there.
They're not there. Yeah.
It is you sometimes carrying out.
Yeah, you can have people there if like there's I understand that you can do that, but she was never going to do that. Like, she was never going to, do that.
Yeah.
So
at Oma's memorial, which was a big party and celebration, by the way, it was the first memorial that we chose to bring Florence to, because I knew it would be a good introduction to celebrating someone's life. Yeah. And
How old it was Florence at the time. Your daughter, for people that
like
don't know.
2 years ago.
So like 3.5, 4 probably.
Yeah.
And I mean, to her, maybe it was just a big party, but we talked a lot about like so for those of you who don't know, I am very good friends with Steph, but Stephanie March in our life is Tante Steph, and Tante means aunt in German. And so we would talk about how Tante Steph's, mama passed away, and her name was Oma, and like, we're going to go and we're going to celebrate her life. And we also don't shy away from death in our family. And a side note, when we were talking about this earlier about talking to your kids about death, there is like a quote from Mr. Rogers that it's something to the effect of, you might wonder what it means to die. And his response is, that's something that everyone wonders about. And I love that, because sometimes as adults and parents, we feel like we're supposed to have all the answers, and we don't when it comes to death, right? We don't. But it also doesn't have to be this big, fearful, scary narrative from the get-go, I don't think. And I'm not trying to shy away from sadness or grief at all. That is 1000% a part of it. But our theme of this conversation is that like death is a part of living too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in our family, we have a lot of people who are aging and older on both sides, and it's a part of our future that there's just going to be a lot of funerals and memorials. And so we've chosen along the way and along the years to take Florence to funerals of even her friends' grandparents who have passed, and to be there for her friends and to kind of like experience this. But that memorials or funerals are a place where you can be sad together and you can laugh together. But Oma's was her first experience with that, which was also a huge fucking party, to be honest.
I want to hear the details.
But there were peonies. This is my point, is that there were peonies at her memorial, and I believe strategically so by your friends, because that was the parting scent, the parting gift. And I would assume that peonies forever and ever and ever in your life will be significant.
Everybody who has a house, like all the kids, they've planted peonies in their yards. And so it's kind of an agreement. Like, she's not buried in a grave, you know what I mean? So then you honor her through nature. And this is the other thing, is my mom was like, I don't want like to be a part of the world in some stationary place. She wants to be out in the world. She's the wind, is what we like to say. And that's what we told the grandkids, you know, that Oma's in the trees now. And that she's like, you know, because they were they were like 2, you know.
Yeah.
Lila was 2, and it was like the idea that she met Oma and knew Oma and remembered Oma, but she knew, where's Oma, you know, and it's like, Oma's in the trees. And so that's how we've kind of, so she's not in one place, or like you don't go visit a gravestone, or you don't do that. You honor her where you find her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or where she finds you.
She told us she's not coming back. She's like,
that was another thing. Okay, I do love this, because this is sassy and I love it. Please share.
It's important to understand that my mom sang in an Episcopal choir, and she went to church, and she studied the Bible, and she did all this stuff. And then she decided at the end that she probably wasn't going to go to heaven, just because that seemed so boring. She's like, really? All the same people feeling the same things and having the same beliefs? Tired. You know, she's like, I don't think I'm going to go hang out there. And so her idea was she wanted to just become part of the energy of the world. She was like, when my soul leaves my body, I'm just going to become a part of the energy in the world. And she's like, I'm not going to be in a freaking bird. She's like, I'm not going to come back as, you know, not going to come visit you, so don't think so. She's like, I'm not doing it. And I'm like, but I need you. She's like, I know you're going to be looking for signs. And she's like, that's your business. She's like, with me, I'm going to be gone. And so I was like, she's like, I just need my freedom, girl. She's like, I just need to get out. And I'm like, okay. So I don't get visited. I don't get visited. And so I have had to put that away, because of course I'm going to haunt the hell out of everybody. All my kids, I'm like, here's the difference, kids. I'm going to haunt you. I'm going to haunt your ass. I'm going to be the bird over there. I'm going to be this bird over here, you know.
I do want to hear about the party, though, a little bit. What did you do? Like, how did you approach it? What did you do?
Again, this is very Oma, but she was like, yeah, it's your party. It's not really my party. She didn't say, like, I want this and I want this. She's like, yeah, it's up to you. She's like, just make it fun. Like, make it a celebration. And she's like, we don't need too many tears. She's like, you know, whatever. And so we gathered at the local restaurant/bar, and we rented out a little space that was overlooking Long Lake. And we just gathered people. The best part about it was, though, and trying to figure out, like, pictures are pictures, you know, and we blew up large pictures of her. And so we did those kind of things. And then, but the most important thing, and I would say that if you have a mom who has any sort of sass or wit, we printed out her texts. And so she had epic texts, you know, that were full of hilarity. And so we printed them out and framed them and hung them around the room. So you could see so you could see our interactions with us. Like for instance, on Matt's birthday, and his birthday comes in November, often after an election, my mom would send him like, yay for you and Joe Biden, you know, like things like when I said, hey, Megan's going into labor, she's like, well, we hope that it's a greased path, you know, and like hopefully it's a quick slip, you know. Of course, this was a woman who had zero fucks, and she just was, going to say all the things. And so then you heard her voice. And it was really, truly when someone, if you think about texting and you think about those words, it's not a frail voice. It's not a voice of an age. You're not listening to someone who is like 83 years old. You're listening to someone who is mentally 35 and on the crack game, And so I would say that like giving a moment for her voice to be there and letting people access that in a way was a brilliant move. I don't know. We only thought of it the night before, and we just
it was very cool. Like it was very, very cool to experience that. And I was taking pictures that day too, but watching everyone, how at weddings or funerals or graduations or whatever, people have like the pictures up and everyone kind of like obligatory goes through it and looks at things and whatever, but then they kind of pass it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But because you had these texts and they were just like printed out is what I remember. And they were throughout the whole room. People were just stopping and reading and laughing and telling stories. And it was like a way that people were engaged in her life and her memory in a very active way. It didn't feel passive at all. It just felt very... it was her voice, but it was hilarious. It was so funny to read some of those. And you did leave her memorial feeling like no matter how much or little you knew her, it was like you left having a better understanding of who she was and carrying that forward.
Yeah, and I would say that I'm going to show you this. Like we all had, these are E's pictures that she sent. So all the boys, everybody wore one of her pins. Like we all wore her earrings. You can see that. Mm-hmm. And then all the boys anybody who didn't have pierced ears wore one of her brooches,
Wow.
And,
that's so cool.
And so we all got to be, and I'm just going to show you because these are E's pictures, but like, that's the whole fam, right? And that's that's the mood. That's the mood right there, is just being so happy to all be together and to be in it and to be a part of having been a part of her life. Like that's the mood, I feel like, for those kind of things. It's just gratitude.
I certainly just feel like I have to ask, because I think people listening are probably people that are going through this moment or, just went through this moment or it's leading up to, and now it's the aftermath. And, it's like, okay, there's these beautiful celebrations and then slowly one by one community kind of quiets and the quiet settles in. And being the resilient, strong, funny woman that you are, I just wonder, like, what was that quiet like? And how, by the day, by the month, by the year, like, how have you moved through it? How have you moved forward?
Well, I do think the benefit of the 6 months of saying the long goodbye was really good. One of the things we did, so the youngest, Jakey, came home obviously for the funeral and everything else. And then he had to go back to Seattle, to the Tacoma area. But Oma gave him her car. Happened to be the summer solstice. And so he and I set out to drive his new car back to Seattle. So we got to drive for 2 days. And our first day we were sort of chasing the sun. And we basically drove for 19 hours that day. And I have to say how remarkably healing it was to just be in the quiet with my one kid and thinking about things and having spectacular landscape of, Montana and Idaho and all the rest roll by. Big rocks, huge sky, rainstorms in a moment that clear into like a massive field of sunshine. No other cars anywhere, and we get out and we just sort of stand there, and I'm like, oh, like it was cathartic, to be clear. And driving him on that day, that was a very big gift that I think was the quiet that I needed, that I didn't even know that I needed, right? Mm-hmm. But after that, I have to say that may have really girded me for the chaos of selling our house, which was a massive undertaking. And so I think that as much as I had time to sort of do a little quiet grieving and a little bit, the idea that I had to spring into action and I had to clear out her house, list it, and get it sold. And that was a part of her wishes. She was like, do not hang on to this house. She's like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but she's like, it is my wish that you just get rid of this house and just like sell it put the money into savings and like invest it in other ways. This house is not it. It needs a lot of help. So we did that, but we had to clear out the entire house and clean it, list it, all that stuff. Meanwhile, I also had a very demanding cycle of work. So I was writing thousands and thousands of words, coordinating photo shoots, doing all this stuff, getting onto media, being a part of the world. And what I'm just trying to tell you is that by the time Thanksgiving came around, I cooked Thanksgiving dinner without her for the first time and was completely blottoed. Just drunk the whole time. Don't understand. Don't remember what I ate. Barely remember what I cooked. Like, I have no memory of it. And the thing that hit me was I forgot to ask everybody what they were thankful for. And I cried about that afterwards at midnight. After everybody left, I sat and I bawled because I forgot to ask what you were thankful for. Like, lost my shit. And then
the crash happened.
The crash happened there. And then Christmas was, rough and weird. And we all just sort of were like, ugh, whatever. And then I went right back into a very hard cycle of work. And by February of the following year of 2024, I got really sick. I got like really, really sick. And it was, I don't know if it was COVID or what, but I had a week where I was down flat and my body was not having it. And I started having weird heart palpitations, and I had stressors that were going on. And I woke up and I realized, I was like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
This isn't working. And so it was time to sort of take stock and to realize I had to repurpose my life and sit in the lessons that she had been trying to teach me and stop running from them. And so so that's what I did.
And now here you are today. And I am so proud of you. And I'm going back to the beginning of this conversation where your mom told her friends, this is how I want you to take care of Steph. Like, watch out for this. Like, these are things that she can and cannot do. Right.
Yeah.
And one of them was around work. This last year, you've made a really big transition. And not that this is like, a work related thing at all, but hearing that story earlier and now seeing how much change you're in the midst of and working towards. I mean, you've transitioned your career, you've opened your own business, you have started this amazing world of Pickle, which I want you to describe because you're going to describe it way better than I am. But it is a delight, and you are your brilliant self, but you are stretching and giving us all a different side of Steph March that we have not seen before. And I'm so excited for where it's going.
And doing what Oma said you should do.
Does it feel like in this work transition, you're carrying out a part of carrying her wishes for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the lesson. We are all in the long goodbye. We're all in it.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't think that I'm going to die tomorrow. And I don't think I'm going to die in 6 months. I'm hoping. But, like, the point is to live like we're all in the long goodbye. And then to never take for granted the small things, and to give your energies to the things that give you meaning, and to not do the same things that you've always done just because you've always done them. But then moving into, doing Pickle, which is, a personal substack, which is talking about, to me, this essence of like the long goodbye, which is, it's about time and it's about seasoning, which is why it's called Pickle, because it's about the fermentation we all go through. We need to continually change. That's the only thing that there is. Change happens when you stop changing. That's actually the literal definition of death. You stop changing. But the idea that, life is about movement and about, taking that vitality and becoming something else. And so I have to keep becoming. And so that's kind of what I set out to do, and talking about it, talking about aging, talking about, what this all means.
I have been a mess over here more than normal. I'm usually pretty emotional, but today I've been a mess. And it's actually because of this one thing that you said. Oh, fuck. I don't even know if I can say it. But I didn't realize, like, that I'm in the long goodbye right now,
You're
too.
in the long goodbye. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. And that's why I'm grateful for you guys for, like, doing this and facing it, because that's the Oma way.
But one of the hardest things, if I could like get my shit together to say this, is that I feel like I'm realizing in this long goodbye that I could never live up to who my mom is, because she's my North Star, just like Oma. And I just feel terrible because I can't live up to her. She's just like the most incredible woman. She's Barb Frank, like she's epic.
Yeah.
But what I learned from you talking about Oma, which is a gift from this conversation, is that my mom raised me to be me. Like that was her ultimate gift. And like, I didn't realize that until listening to you talk about Oma. Oma's gift to you was to like raise you to be you. And that is like, thank you for giving me that gift today to realize that. Because I could kind of let go of trying to be my mom, and just like, she never wanted me to be her. She just wanted me to be me. So anyways, I know it has like nothing to do with this conversation, but
no, that's big.
It's big and it's revelatory, and she wanted you to be you alongside her. And that's what you've been doing. And that's where you are now.
It is revelatory, and I thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thanks, Oma.
Thanks, Oma.
Okay, this
Take it away,
conversation.
Lisa.
I know. Okay, so a couple things that I want to end on. We have some rapid fire funny questions.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get back to the levity here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're gonna close out this first season with something celebratory, with some thoughts. Okay. So, are you ready? Okay.
Do it.
What is one comfort show you watched while caregiving?
I'm a movie hound, you guys. So I would go to movies. Like I would. Is that okay to say? Like
Absolutely.
I would, like,
Yeah.
Go to the movie theater. Get in the dark. No one can see you. Be by yourself. Get the big tub of popcorn and whatever's out. Just the act of going to the movie is my show.
Love it.
Love it.
What is the best thing your mom ever cooked?
Oh God. Well, it's the pound cake. So we call it the Oma pound cake, and it's this French pound cake that's dense and buttery and beautiful and refined, and it's like we all make it for each other now.
Is it ever as good as Oma's?
I have feelings. She always put lemon in hers. I do not put lemon in mine. I don't like a lemony pound cake, and I put sometimes rose water in mine. So that's just it, they're different.
What is one song that reminds you of Oma?
Well, it has to be like Vivaldi's Four Seasons, because the woman blared classical music. I could hear her coming down the block.
Is there anything that you say now that Oma used to say?
We say all the time, well, it's signature of our family to walk in a room and go, hello, because that's what she did every time. But there's also, she always said that college was the best time of her life. She loved it. And she and her friends had a toast that they would raise their glasses, and whenever they clinked, they would say Simplex Munditiis, which just means simple elegance in Latin. And so my friends gave me a little bracelet engraved with Simplex Munditiis on it. Whenever I go for cheers, in my head or out loud, we say Simplex Munditiis. So,
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
So good.
I can't think of like a better teacher than you and Oma today on how to like live and die. Dead.
Yeah.
Like mic drop the end.
Yes.
Like
yes.
I had no idea what we were going to talk about today, to be honest. I was like, I don't know. She threw a party for her dead mom. I don't know. But like, holy shit.
It's a lot.
I know.
Holy shit. I need to take a nap. I need a margarita.
I know. But
What
you
did you
guys
just-
are willing to listen, and that cannot be undersold, because again, you have to be willing to check into these emotions. You have to be willing to go through the hard stuff to get to the good stuff. And that's the entire vibe of your podcast. So
Yeah.
congratulations to you two for doing this, because this is the good work. You're doing the good work.
Thank you. I feel so proud. I feel so good. I mean, here we are. We are at the end of season 1.
Finale vibes.
And I kind of can't believe it. The feedback, the letters, the DMs, the opportunities that have come our way, but how useful people have found this podcast so far has been the whole reason, I think, as to why we embarked on this. And I'm just so grateful, and we're learning so much, and I can't wait to continue everything on.
I think it is really hard if you haven't been through it to listen. I think you're right. We really underestimate what that means, like when you can really just sit and listen. And I just hope that people do feel less alone listening to this, and like just know that we see you and we hear you, and we're here to listen to your stories, and hopefully like you're feeling connected to all of us.
So on that note, let's do a cheers. Raise your coffees.
Yes.
To season 1 finale,
Yes.
but also to Oma and to all of us in the middle of the long goodbye, and to living. To living,
Yes.
right? What was
To living.
Oma's
What did
Oma's
she
cheers?
say? What did she
It's
say?
Simplex Munditiis.
Simplex Munditiis. Woo! We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully you can take away some helpful info and tips. All links and resources can be found in our show notes.
Please share this episode with anyone you think this might help. And if you have a topic that you'd like to talk more with us about in the sandwich generation world, please slide into our DMs on Instagram. Our handle is @thesandwichgenerationpod. We hope you'll be back for more convos with us soon. And remember, no matter whose diaper you're changing, you're never alone.